if you could go ahead and turn in your Bibles to the book of James, chapter 1. And I've done a lot of meditating lately on a certain phrase that Paul uses in Philippians. And what does it mean, and how to do it, and how we should live out this phrase. Now I'll just read to you real quick the phrase. You don't need to turn there. Go ahead and turn to James chapter 1. But it says, James is saying, "Wherefore, my beloved." Okay, now the wherefore is because of the fact that every knee will bow to Jesus Christ and proclaim Him to be Lord. So what Paul is saying, he says, "Wherefore, my beloved." And the wherefore here is because of the supremacy of Christ. Because of the great judgment day that's coming to those who are lost. And because of the day of Christ to those who believe, because of all these things, the preeminence of Christ. Wherefore, of those things, my beloved, these are believers, as ye have always obeyed, not as in my presence only, but now much more in my absence. Paul says you're very obedient. Even when I was there, you were obedient. When I'm not there, you're still obedient. And I'm happy about that. And then he says this phrase, which is very important, and I want to kind of discuss one aspect of this phrase, even though there's, a million ways I could go at this, but I'm going to talk about only just one. Paul says this, "Work out your own salvation with fear and trembling." Let me say that again. Work out your own salvation with fear and trembling. All right? Now that means each one of these people that Paul is writing to, he says, you have your own salvation. These are clearly saved people. And he says to work out your own salvation. Now, of course, you're not baby Christians. You cannot work for your own salvation. You can work out your own salvation. All right? Just like you go to the gym and you work out your muscles. All right? If you don't have muscles, then you can't work anything out. But because these people have salvation, they are able to work it out, their own salvation. Okay? How did God save you? What were the circumstances? What was the situation? Who was it that shared with you the gospel and how you got saved? Okay? Think about that. That's not my salvation. That's your own salvation. Mine is different. Okay? I have my own salvation testimony. And you have yours. And we need to work it out. All right? Now, as the teenagers would say today, how do you flex your salvation? All right? That's kind of what Paul is saying. He says, I want you to flex your salvation. I want you to show it off. I want you to work your salvation in the eyes of other people. And how should we be doing that? He says, with fear and trembling. Again, with fear and trembling. What is the cause of that fear? And the cause of that fear is because of the greatness of Christ and because of this future that Christ brings to us, brings to the lost, that they will declare Jesus Christ as Lord. Every single person. Okay? And because of what we have coming for us at the day of Christ. Okay, Paul says, I don't want to be ashamed because of my work for you on the day of Christ. Okay, so for the saved and for the lost, we need to behave in a way that our salvation is with fear of what is to come, and it causes us to tremble. All right? So, that's just something I've been thinking about. And one way to do that is in James chapter 1. One way that I think all of us, not intuitively, we don't really connect this to this verse, but I think maybe we should, is in James chapter 1, verse number 12. All right? Now, in the back of your mind, I want you to be thinking, how can I show my salvation? How can I live it, prove it, magnify it, show it off to people around me, both saved and lost, in a way that is full of fear and trembling? That's how you work out your salvation. All right? That's what we're talking about today. James chapter 1, verse 12. Blessed is the man that endureth temptation. The way that we flex our salvation, the way that we work it out with fear and trembling, is how we handle temptation. Temptation comes to every man and woman. It comes in different forms. And Satan is the master of being able to find that point where he can tempt you and be effective. All right? It says, and by the way, temptation does come from Satan, not from God. It says, for when he is tried, he shall receive the crown of life, which the Lord hath promised to them that love him. So when you're tried and tempted, now the Lord does try, the Lord does test, does not tempt. The Lord doesn't say, hey, look at this sin over here. Try and get that sin. And then we go for the sin and God says, ha, got you. That was my temptation. Okay, God does not tempt anyone to sin. He does let us be tried and tested. Verse 13 says, let no man say when he is tempted, I am tempted of God. For God cannot be tempted with evil, neither tempteth he any man. God is not tempted by sin. And God does not tempt you with sin either. Now the devil does, Satan does, your flesh does, demons do. But God does not. He might allow it as a test, but he does not tempt. Okay, the enemy does the tempting. Right? And so when we are tempted, this is a test that we have, that we can overcome, and we can be rewarded for overcoming. All right? And that is with the crown of life. All right, it says, but every man is tempted. We know that. Every man, woman, and child is tempted. Okay, now a child might be tempted differently than an adult. All right, if someone takes my toy, I probably won't be quite as tempted to throw myself on the ground, kick my hands and feet up in the air and scream and cry. It's a different type of temptation. But every man is tempted when he is drawn away of his own lust and enticed. You have your own lust. And when you give into your lust, when you feed your lust, you're tempted. It might be the lust for adultery or fornication. It might be a lust for greed, for money, for wicked gain, like cheating or stealing. Okay, it might be whatever this lust is. We all have this lust in ourselves. All right. If any man says temptation, I don't have any temptation. Be it tempting with the eyes, or tempting to prioritize his money over the work of the Lord. We all have temptation, every man, woman, and child. And it says we all have lust, and because of that lust, it leads us to a temptation. So lust hath conceived. First we have the lust. It begins there. And it bringeth forth sin. When you follow that sin, when you follow your lust, when you're tempted because of your lust, and you follow after it, what happens? Sin. And sin, when it is finished, bringeth forth death. So first you lust, and through your lust you receive temptation, and then you follow after that temptation, you do not endure, you do not get that crown of life, are not blessed by God, and you go into sin, and you continue in that sin, it will bring forth death. James says, do not err, my beloved brethren. Every good gift and every perfect gift is from above, and cometh down from the Father of lights, with whom is no variableness, neither shadow of turning. Of his own will begat he us with the word of truth, that we should be a kind of first fruits of his creatures. Okay, that means we are the preeminent creation of God. We're better than the trees and the bears and the elephants, and we are God's first fruits. We are the best that he has created. Better than the angels. It says, wherefore, so because of that, because of the responsibility that falls upon us, because of the ease at which we are so quick and so fast to give into temptation, okay, and to give into our lust, it says, wherefore, my beloved brethren, because of our carnality and our drive to go towards that pursuit, let every man be swift to hear, slow to speak, slow to wrath. Okay, what does that mean? That means we need to be very quick in listening to other people. And that includes criticism. Right? If someone says, hey, I don't like what that guy preached. I don't like that guy's attitude or whatever. I don't like the work that he does. Okay? I don't like his carpentry. I don't like his computer programming. We should be very swift to hear both the good and the bad. And Just listen. Doesn't mean what they're saying is right, but the more information you get, the better it will be in you making a decision. Be swift to hear. All right? Facebook, YouTube, and some of these extreme left-wing organizations, they don't want you. They want to censor information. All right? I believe that we should try to get as much information as you can and make an informed decision, where censorship, their argument is to shut up all the information they can except what they want to push. All right? The Bible says, don't go into censorship. Now, if it's, something, bastos or something, okay, you can, that's something different. But points of view, looking at something from different angles, be swift to hear about it. All right? Especially if it's something negative directed towards yourself. All right? If someone says, hey, what you're doing there in begotten self, it's wrong. You're doing it all wrong, and you just don't know what you're doing. You're a bad evangelist. Bad. Okay? My job here from Paul says, hey, don't go off and be tempted. Don't go off and be quick to be carnal. Listen to what people have to say. Be swift to hear. And then it says slow to speak. All right? And this is a big problem, because we have just, by our society, we have just been conditioned that we always have to have an answer, or you're a fool if you don't know the answer. If someone comes to me and says, hey, what does this Bible verse mean? What is this interpretation? How can I apply this? I'm expected to know, and often you're expected to know. We have to have an answer all the time for every question. It's okay to say, I don't know. Let me think about it. Let me pray about it. Let me meditate about it. All right? That's why I don't really like debate formats. Because of the debate, it's more like who has the best filter, who has the best scripted lines. Okay, this is the argument. What's the script and rebuttal to that argument? Oh, I didn't have that script, and now I don't know what to do, because it takes time to think about it and pray about it and meditate on things. And so we're so conditioned that we have to have an answer to everything that's put at us. It's not helpful. It doesn't do us good. We need to be slow to speak. It's okay to say, you know what? You said something that was harmful or hurtful to me, and I'm just going to take a breath. I'm not going to reply to a Facebook message or in a conversation. I'm just going to consider what I'm going to say. Be slow to speak. Okay? It's not talking about Abraham who's speaking slow. It says slow to speak. That means consider what you're going to say. Now, if it's, something simple and mundane, like, what do I want? How do you want your eggs? Over easy or not? Okay, there's not too much to contemplate there. But in serious matters, especially spiritual matters, be slow to speak. Don't say something if you really don't know if it's true. And then the last one is the key. This is where I really want to focus. How do we work out our salvation? I think one way that we can really separate ourselves from the world, and that we can really show that we are people of God, is that we are slow to wrath. For the wrath of man worketh not the righteousness of God. All right? The righteousness of God is not going to be evident. You're not going to show people, hey, what a great God I have, by your quickness or your over-eagerness in your wrath. All right? So, slow to wrath. Now, I made, just before starting here, I just kind of looked throughout the Bible, in the Old Testament especially, and just looked at some examples of people that were too quick in showing their wrath. All right? People that, not just quick, people that showed wrath. Okay? Who says his wrath was kindled. All right? Now, I'm not talking about the Lord's wrath, okay? The Lord can show wrath because He's the Lord, because He is God, all right? He knows how to be quick to wrath, and it's not too quick, all right? The first instance I saw was of Jacob and Rachel. Okay, Rachel says to Jacob, Jacob, you give me children, or I'm going to die. And it says Jacob's wrath was kindled against Rachel. He says, Rachel, I'm not God. I don't open and shut the womb. There's nothing I could do to control that. Don't blame me for it. His anger was kindled against Rachel. So Jacob's wrath was kindled against Rachel, and he says, hey, I can't do anything about it. All right? And Rachel got defensive. and she had a bad reaction, all right, and a trouble, and she says, okay, fine, you can conceive through my handmaid Bilhah. And Jacob says, okay, fine, all right. Now they conceived Dan, and Dan is the worst of all the tribes of Israel. Okay, the most prone to idolatry and the most wicked of all the tribes of Israel, all 13 tribes, was Dan. All right, where did Dan come from? Bilhah. And where did the idea of Bilhah conceiving through Jacob come from? It came from Rachel. And where did Rachel get that? Because she was reacting to the anger, the quickness of the wrath of Jacob to Rachel. Okay, now to you married guys and gals out there, just be honest. How many times in your marriage did you get filled with wrath towards your husband or your wife, and because of your wrath, it made your life just peachy wonderful, and your marriage was just so much stronger and better, and you and your spouse are just so much closer because of your wrath that you displayed in your marriage? Okay? Now, if you've been married for any period of time, you're going to know that wrath does not work the righteousness of God. A husband and wife having a good harmony in their marriage, that's the righteousness of God. That's what we want. And wrath divides that. Wrath separates that. As it separates us from our spouse, it separates us from God. All right? I've been married 16 years, and it did not take me even 16 days to figure out if I show wrath to my wife, it's going to bring us farther apart. Wrath does not bring people closer together. All right? When I got married 16 years ago, I promised my wife I will never raise my voice against you. That was my promise. In 16 years, I still kept it. All right? I've never raised my voice at my wife. Doesn't mean I haven't showed wrath. It doesn't mean I've not said things that I regret. It just means I've never shouted in her with anger. Have I had anger? Yes. Have I ever shouted and raised my voice? No. All right? And I can tell you, it's been a big help. All right? When you raise your voice, the volume of your voice, it doesn't matter anymore what you said. You've pretty much certainly lost control. All right? Now I can lose control over what I say, and I do lose control over what I say without raising my voice. Volume. But I'm going to tell you, once you raise your voice, the volume of your voice, what you have to say pretty much does not matter. You've now alienated, separated yourself from the object or the person of the volume of your voice, okay? So if you want to drive away someone, yell and shout and be loud at them, all right? If it's a dog that's on your property you want off, hey, you want that alienation. If it's your child, if it's your spouse, if it's your loved one, if it's your church mate, please don't raise your voice, all right? If someone's ever upset with me, one of you listening gets upset with me, understandable, I'm probably in the wrong. Don't raise your voice to me. I won't raise my voice to you, okay? And I think if we do that, we'll find that is a very big help in avoiding the damaging part of wrath. Wrath's not always bad, we'll see that, but it's almost always bad. Not quite always, almost. All right, like more than 99%, but not quite 100, okay? In your lifetime, the number of times that you need to show wrath is probably less than this many, okay? All right, the second time, so we see that Jacob was filled with wrath against Rachel, and bad things happen, okay? Bad things. Next is Potiphar listened to his wife, and she lied about Joseph, said that he tried to defile her, and of course Joseph did not. And it says that Potiphar's wrath was kindled against Joseph. Now I think later, after Potiphar, he probably said something, Joseph, I'm going to kill you, what you've done. I don't know if that's were the exact words, but we know that Potiphar obviously did not kill Joseph. And he probably would have if he actually believed him, but maybe, I'm just guessing here, Potiphar said some things, and then he realized, sat down with Joseph, his wrath abated, he calmed down, and he says, wow, I wish I did not say those things that I did in wrath, but I've already said it, so I guess I got to sentence you to life in prison. All right, I believe Potiphar believed Joseph. Still sentenced him to life in prison, maybe because at first, his first reaction was his wrath was kindled, and he said some things, and once you say it, folks, it's gone, okay? Once those words come out of your mouth, that's it. You can't reach out and pull them back. So many times in my life, I've wished I could just take that up. It's too late. Be slow to wrath. Be slow to speak. All right, the next one, it's kind of a comedy. It's Balaam, and his wrath is kindled against his ass, his donkey. And here he is, he's trying to ride his donkey, and his donkey sees an angel with a sword drawn, going to kill them, and the donkey stops. And Balaam says, "Come on, you stupid donkey!" and starts hitting the donkey. It says his wrath was kindled against the donkey. And then he argues with the donkey. Can you imagine being so angry that your donkey talks to you and you start talking back? Your senses, you've lost it. You've lost it at that point, okay? And what happened? Well, God opened the eyes of Balaam too, and he saw the angel, and the angel says, "You better be thankful for your donkey, or you'd be dead right now." All right? What happened to Balaam's anger? After he realized what it was about. He's quick to wrath, and then what happened? Oh, oops. All right? The next one is Balak versus Balaam. All right? Now, Balak is the king of the Moabites, and he hires Balaam to curse the Israelites, but instead of cursing them, Balaam is honest with Balak, and he blesses Israel. And Balaam says, "I can only tell you what God says. I need to be honest." And God just blessed them. And it says Balak's anger was kindled against Balaam. And guess what happened? Instead of Balaam calming down and saying, "Okay, well, I better get to know their God," instead Balak got angry at Balaam. And guess what happened to Balak as a result of his anger? He got COVID-19 and he died. All right? The next is Samson against the Philistines. All right? Now, this is one of the only two that I could see is maybe good. All right? It says that Samson, the story is Samson had a riddle. And he made a bet, a wager, a gamble, and says, I'll bet you 30 changes of garments, I forget what it was, that you can't guess my riddle. And the family, his in-laws, pressured his wife to spill the beans, tell him what the riddle is, the answer. And so it says that Samson's anger was kindled, and it says the Spirit of the Lord came upon him, and he killed 30 Philistines. All right? Killing 30 Philistines doesn't sound like, a good thing to have your wrath to kill people. All right? But it was of the Lord. It was in the Spirit of the Lord. Is it because his strength came from the Lord and what he did was wrong? Or his strength came from the Lord and God wanted him to kill those 30 Philistines? I don't know. I don't want to go there right now. I don't know. But we can see that because of Samson's anger, he killed 30 people. All right? Now, maybe it was a good killing. But in your case, I can tell you, if you kill 30 people, all right, I know for sure that you are not. It's not because the Spirit of the Lord was upon you. All right? I'll just tell you that right now. All right, the next one is Saul against the Ammonites. Okay, now I hope you're seeing a pattern here, a theme here. All right? Jacob gets angry at Rachel and comes back to harm him. Potiphar gets mad at Joseph and he regrets it. Balaam is against his donkey. Oh, his donkey was just saving his life. Balak gets angry at Balaam and it cost Balak his life. Samson gets angry at the Philistines, and by the way, because of that action, he lost his wife. His marriage is over after that. The family gave his wife to his best man. The best man at his wedding got the wife. Awkward. Okay? And then it says that Saul, now this is the only one I could truly say for sure, this is good wrath. And it was quick wrath and good. So what happened was the king of the Ammonites, Nahash, or Nahash, which means snake, serpent in Hebrew, Nahash went up against the city. I think it was Jabesh in Gilead. And they said to the men, we're going to, we got you surrounded. Surrender. We'll pluck out one of your eyes and we'll allow you to live. And you'll be our servants. If you don't, we'll kill you. And they said, hey, give us like 3 days or something for someone to rescue us. And they said, okay, fine. And then in 3 days, they said, we'll open the door and let you in. So Nahash says, okay, no one's going to rescue you. And I don't need to fight you. You'll just open the door. And then they sent out messengers, went to King Saul, who's a new king, and said, hey, Saul, this is what Nahash is doing. Picking on some poor little village, and he's going to torture them or kill them or both. And it says, Saul's anger was kindled against the Ammonites. And he acted quickly, and he defeated the Ammonites. And him and those Ammonites were forever alienated. All right? This is a point here. When you show wrath, it is only for alienation. It is only for separation. Okay? Don't use your wrath to your spouse, to your children, to your church mates, to your boss, to your workmates. Don't do it. You don't want to alienate them. Okay? If you want to get someone out of your life for good, all right? Let's say someone's a very bad influence on you. They're no good for you. You want them gone. Like Saul wanted those Ammonites and Nahash gone. Okay, quick to anger. Quick to wrath. But you better very slowly and carefully consider before you give that wrath that you really want them out of your life. That's really what you want. Okay? Because I believe there's very, very, very few times you would ever say, I want that person out of my life forever. I want to damage or permanently destroy my relationship with that person. How many times can you say, honestly, that's what God wanted you to do? All right? Probably never. I'm not saying never, but probably. All right, the next is Eliab against David. Now, Eliab is David's older brother. David goes to the battlefield. And David says, what's going on, guys? And they said, oh, there's this giant. It's Goliath. He's cursing our God. We're all too scared to fight him. And David says, what? Someone needs to go out there and fight that guy. And Eliab, his anger is kindled against David. He says, David, you go back to the sheep. You just kind of come here and gawk and watch fighting and stuff. You get out of here, little kid. Okay. Eliab's anger was kindled against David. And what happened? David kills Goliath. And what happens to every word that came out of Eliab's mouth? It came right back at him. The tone of his words came right back at him. So how do we remember Eliab today? We remember him as the guy that's quick to wrath, that said those stupid things that he did against David. When we see Eliab in heaven, probably a believer, when we see Eliab in heaven, we're going to say, oh, aren't you that guy, Eliab? Yeah, King David's brother. You're the one that said those stupid words. Eliab's going to say, oh, why didn't I work out my salvation? Why was I so quick to wrath? Okay. Now, next one is kind of funny also. We have 3 more. And that's David was quick to kindle his wrath against himself. All right, so what happened was David had taken the wife of Uriah the Hittite, Bathsheba, committed adultery with her, murdered him, and took her wife to be for his own. All right, he had many wives already. Poor Uriah only had one, and he took the one that he had and killed Uriah. And David said, and Nathan, the prophet of God, came to David and said, David, there is the shepherd who had one sheep and loved it, slept in its bed, took care of it like a child. And then his neighbor was a rich guy, had a big, huge flock of sheep. And the rich guy stole the guy's only sheep that he had because he did not want to lose one of his own sheep. What do you think we should do about that, David? And it says, David's wrath was kindled against the man. Now, of course, we know that man, as Nathan pointed his finger and says, thou art the man, King David. He says, you're the guy that steals the only wife this guy has, Uriah, when you had many of your own. Rich guy. All right? What was Nathan doing? What was God doing through Nathan when he set that trap for David? He knew that David's wrath would be kindled. He knew that David would lash out with his mouth, with his words, in anger, quickly, and then take it and turn it around 180 degrees like a knife and just twist it and say, David, your wrath and your anger is kindled against your own self. All right? 2 more. The Israeli army against Amaziah. Now, you might not know the story, but there's a king of Judah named Amaziah, and he went out to go fight against the Edomites, and he hired the Israelis of the north to go out and fight with him against the Edomites. And he gave them, I think, 100 talents of silver. And so the army's marching into Judah to join them, and the prophet of God says, hey, Amaziah, if you want their help, you're going to lose. But if you want God's help, he'll win. But God's not going to give you a victory if this Israeli army is going to join with you in the fight, because then you'll say that they helped you gain the victory. Amaziah repented. Wasn't a good king, but he understood, and he wanted to win, and so he repented, and he told the army there of Israel, go home, I don't need you. What about the 100 talents of silver? He says, forget it. Keep it. Bad investment on my part. And then Amaziah goes, and he fights against the Edomites, and wins, by the way. And it says that the army of Israel, their anger was kindled greatly against Amaziah. All right? And because of that anger, while Amaziah was out fighting against the Edomites, they went in and destroyed Jerusalem, broke down the walls, and took whatever they wanted, ransacked it. Killed a lot of people, took a whole lot of prisoners, all right? Which they later returned because one of the mighty men says, we went too far. And they did. And God judged them big time, because they lifted up their hand against their fellow Jews. All right? So what did it cost them? It cost them exactly what they tried to gain is what they ended up losing. All right? Cost the army of Israel. Last one, Elihu against Job and his friends. Real quick, Elihu hears Job. It says his wrath was kindled against Job. It says his wrath was kindled against Job's friends. And then Elihu gets on this big long sermon. And then God says, Job, I'm going to kill your friend Elihu. All right? Actually, all of his friends. But God says, I'm going to kill Elihu. Because that guy's foolish. What did Elihu's wrath get him? It got him a death sentence from God. Now Job interceded for Elihu and saved his life. But because of Elihu's wrath, it got a death sentence from God. All right? Now think back to every single example. All right? And what can you tell me happened to all of these people, except for Saul and the Ammonites? That was a good one. What happened to all of these people when they showed great wrath and were quick to wrath? Okay, I'll just recap real quick. Jacob's wrath was kindled against Rachel, and because of that, he had a child through Bilhah, Dan. All right? Because of that, Rachel got defensive and says, okay, have a child through Bilhah. And that cost Jacob and his children and them dearly. They had all kinds of fights and problems because of Dan. Next, Potiphar to Joseph. Potiphar got angry at Joseph before he knew that Joseph was innocent. Balaam against his donkey, when the donkey was saving his life. Balak against Balaam, and that cost him his life. Samson against the Philistines, that cost him his wife. Saul against the Ammonites, Spirit of the Lord led that one. Okay, so it's not saying it's always bad. Eliab against David, and it caused Eliab a great bit of embarrassment when he was the one trying to embarrass David. Saul against Jonathan. Maybe I skipped that one. But Saul says, why do you help this son of Jesse, David? You're confused. And he cursed Jonathan. He said, you're a son of a perverse, wicked woman. Okay, which is not a very nice thing to say to Jonathan. And it came back to bite Saul. All right. David against himself. Thou art the man, David. And David says, I'm going to put that guy to death. And it was David that was saying he himself should be put to death. Okay, the army of Israel came in and crushed Judah, which they weren't supposed to do. They did it in anger, and because of that, God would crush them. And finally, Elihu said, Job, you are just a wicked, terrible guy. And God says, no, Elihu, you are. All of those examples tells us about people who were quick to wrath. All right? What does each one of those examples, what is the theme there of every single one? Except Saul's wrath toward the Ammonites. What is it? Okay? You might have already figured it out. It's whatever is the object of their wrath. Okay? whatever it is that how they expressed their wrath, that's what came back on them. All right? So when Balak was mad at Balaam, I could kill you for this. He was killed. When Eliab says, David, I just want to embarrass you, call you all kinds of mean names. He was the one that received he didn't say, I'm going to kill you, David. He says, I'm going to embarrass you, David. And it's he who was embarrassed. All right? We see that, Samson, when he was mad about his in-laws messing with his wife. You don't mess with my wife! And because of his anger, what did he lose? Didn't lose his life. He lost his wife. That was the object of his anger. In other words, we see something in the Bible that shows us when we are quick to anger, whatever it is that our anger is about, God's going to use that 180 degrees turn against our own self. Okay? That's just kind of a theme that I noticed just sitting here looking at it. That when we are quick to anger, whatever it is that we are angry about, so quick to our anger about, God's going to make us suffer the consequence that we are trying to give as a consequence to the object or the person of our anger. All right? So let's say, you want to punch someone. I'm going to punch you in the face. God's going to say, well, because of your anger, you'll be the one punched in the face. All right? I'm going to hit you with a stick. And God says, I'm going to have you hit with a stick. All right? Slow to wrath. It's one way, not the only way, of course. It's one of many ways we can work out, show forth, demonstrate that we're different than those people that are lost. All right? What's really different about you is that a Christian has control over himself, and that control is what God calls freedom. All right? Freedom over sin. Catholics, they don't have that freedom that we have. Galatians and Muslims and Buddhists and atheists, they don't have the freedom that we have over sin. We have freedom over our own self that we don't have without Christ. And I believe that is one very good way that we can show the world that we can work out our salvation. All right? And just as an aside, just as a practical application, okay? This goes on how you deal with me, how you deal with your children, how you let us be united in Christ in love. All right? People will know that we're Christians by our love. And if we're attacking each other and fighting with each other, that's bad. I mean, we don't really want to be fighting with the world. Okay? In a sense we do, but in a way we want to get along with them so we can give them the gospel. And if the world sees us, it sees me fighting one of you there, or you fighting against each other, or you're fighting against me, and obviously we will wrong each other. We will do things that are wrong to each other. We'll say the wrong things because we're human and we're still in this body of death. But, that being said, let's be slow to wrath one to another. Let's love each other. Let's show each other kindness. Let's show each other compassion and patience. And let's understand that in all of us is this temptation to be quick to speak, to be very quick to wrath. But rather let us work out our own salvation.